What up and shalom. Welcome to the Rob and Caleb Show, the show where theology matters, scholarship counts. That's important today. Scholarship counts and theology matters. My name is Caleb Haig. With me, as always, Rob Van Hoff. What up, Rob? 'Tis the season.
That was a wonderful intro.
Made that this morning.
Was that the Kirk Cameron clip?
Yeah.
Oh, who is the lady?
I don't know. Hang on.
That's all right.
Hang on just a sec. Mystery trumpets heard in Spokane, Washington. Ha!
I heard them.
Nice. Did you?
Yeah, it was the other night. It was the
somebody. We should tell our listeners what's going on. Derek in the chat room just posted this thing. It says mysterious trumpets of the apocalypse heard in Spokane, Washington. That's where Rob is. Go, Rob. You heard him.
Well, in the middle of the valley is the Valley Mall, and they had these giant graders scraping ice off the thing, like in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
But the sound of the steel, like echoing through the hills, it sounded like. I told my wife, we were up at like 3 a.m. outside listening to this. Like, it sounded like one of God's angels is learning to play the shofar. It was like,
were you like, oh my word, the Messiah's coming. The Messiah's coming. Get your Bible. I got questions.
Well, either that or we're left behind.
Uh-oh. Yep. There's a movie.
Is Kirk Cameron still here?
Well,
has anybody seen Kirk Cameron?
Where is Kirk Cameron?
Like, we need a Kirk Cameron cam. Like, if you like you just log in anytime. Is he still here?
Oh man, that's awesome. A Kirk Cameron.
Let's create an app.
Cam. Yes.
Cameron. Has anybody seen him lately?
Okay, it is the season. 'Tis the season. Should I get my sunglasses out? Hanukkah and Christmas are coming right up, and as many of you know, I don't celebrate the Christmas, nor does Mr. Van Hoff. However, every year we take the opportunity to talk about the origins of Hanukkah, the origins of Christmas. Every year we try to make it a little bit different. And this year, we have something totally different. But first, let's not jump the gun. If you want to yell at us and disagree with us, if you want to love us and agree with us and tell us how wonderful we are, whatever you want to do, you can kind of not disagree or agree. You can just leave comments. Leave comments by calling us, 253-465-3205. There are people utilizing that, by the way, and we thank you for utilizing it, because that's what it's there for. I'll give it to you again. It's 253-465-3205. 465-3205. Okay. So, this is one of my favorite episodes every year, and the reason why is because it takes me the longest to prepare for it, because I want to make sure that I'm doing justice to what's going on.
And for me, I forget most of what I learn, and so I have to go back and relearn what I learned the year before. And then I usually learn a couple more things.
Yeah.
And then I forget it all again, because it's really not...
Now, you wanted to say something about Hanukkah before we get into the... Did you want to do that now, or you want to do it later?
Oh, I know what I was going to share.
Yeah.
Well, I teach a local Hebrew class to homeschool kids. I have about nine kids come from three or four different families, 3 different families. We do a 2-hour Hebrew class once a week, and so I've been looking, like, okay, I Google online. I'm looking for Hebrew tellings of the Hanukkah story, like that are in Hebrew for children. And I came across two that I was like looking through different websites, and I'm like, okay, here's 2 stories. One of them was at a Hebrew Chabad website, and I read through that story. I think that's the one we're actually going to read. And what I do is I create a little vocab list. I make sure the Hebrews were, pretty easy. And so the Chabad tells the story that it's the Jews versus the Greeks. The Greeks defile the temple, and the Jews basically kick them out of the land. And that's just like in one paragraph. Then like 3 more paragraphs of how they wanted to light the menorah, but they only had enough pure oil for one day, which is the Talmudic story. So, but it lasted for 8 days, so it's a miracle story. And then it gets into the dreidel, talks about the dreidel and the meanings of the letters on the dreidel. And it also gives, for the Maccabees, it says that the Maccabees stands for Mi Kamoka Ba Elim. So Mem, Kaf, Bet for Maccab, which means comes from the word hammer, apparently, is actually an acronym for the Mika Mocha, who is like you, O Lord among the gods. So I thought, okay, this is interesting. But really, so the Chabad telling of Hanukkah for children in Hebrew just is the Talmudic story, kind of with plus the dreidel and the gelt, because it talks about giving Hanukkah gelt. So nothing that we would find in the ancient sources.
The whole story is basically made up.
And then I found a poem for children. And this is the one that blew me away. So this is in Hebrew. It's a Hebrew poem. And it's about the Greeks have surrounded the city, and the Jews are starving. And there was a Jewish lady, a Yehudit, right? A Jewish lady gal. She goes out with wine and cheese and milk to as a sign of surrender, and she gets the captain of the army drunk and then cuts his head off and then brings his head back into the city gates, holds it up.
Sounds like a great story for the children.
And all the Jews rejoice. The sun comes up. The Greeks see that their commander is body there without a head, and they all flee to the hills. And the Jews win, and that's why. So the father tells the children, "That's why we eat fried, fritters."
The 3-year-old,
to remember the beheaded, and so I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me.
Like, the 3-year-old's like, Dad, what's decapitated?
Okay, so, but the thing is this, it's like, this is Hebrew tellings of Hanukkah story for children.
It's like
in our day and age.
It's like the Grinch that stole Christmas.
Yeah.
Only Jewish.
So, like, in that culture, and is like Israeli, Jewish culture, are they like, oh, this is like the Grinch, it's not real, or do they take, well, this really happened? But it's not like a made up character like a Grinch who's like, and the Wahoos or the whatevers, Whoville. It's not like that. It's not totally Fantasyland. It's like, this is the battle. This is what happened. She tricked him, cut his head off, and we have the victory. And I'm just like, wow, at what point does history matter? At what point does truth matter? At what point are we going to not be in that post-truth world?
This is perfect for
I lost your video on...
Uh-oh. What I was saying is that this is perfect because what your source says, okay, your source. Now, when was this story written? Like medieval times, right?
Well, the poem and the little short story of Hanukkah on the Chabad website are, I would say, in the last 10, 20 years. I think they were written probably in the last...
Even better.
They're new.
Even better. Okay, good. We're going to talk about that. Here's what I've realized. So what I did this week is, by the way, I should say one of the reasons that we're recording on Tuesday instead of Wednesday is because Adam, my professional mead brewing friend, is
there you go. You got the quotes, Adam.
Is meeting me over in Leavenworth tomorrow with his family and my family and some other people. We're going to have a good time. So what I did this week was...
But they're not going to look at any of the Christmas lights.
Oh, I will. They're not Christmas lights. Nope. They're holiday lights, man. Holiday lights. Okay. Come on. Okay, so what I did was I went back to various ministries like 119 Ministries, New to Torah, and what I was going to do was look at how they present Christmas as a pagan holiday, and I was going to then talk about that. I kind of did that, but the other day I saw that Zach Bauer, New to Torah, which is his ministry, newtotorah.com, he put out a debate. I'm putting quote marks around debate because, well, okay, anyway, he put out a debate. This debate was with a Christian apologist who sounded like a little kid. I think he might have just been sick, but yeah. Anyway, and the debate was titled, "Is the Christmas tree pagan?" And instantly I was like, no, don't do it, Zach. It's a trap. It's a trap. Right away. And Zach just walked right into it. And here's the thing is that there are ways to debate the pagan origins of of Christmas. There's ways not to debate the pagan origins of Christmas. And here's the deal, is that the Hebrew roots / Messianic movement is the staple for how not to debate the pagan origins of Christmas. It's ridiculous.
Like what not to do?
Yes, exactly. Now, everybody knows that listens to the show on a regular basis. We try hard to emphasize that scholarship counts. Theology matters, scholarship counts. There is a way to do scholarship, and there's a way not to do scholarship. And guess what? These guys...
Yeah, but are these guys are they putting themselves out as scholars? Or are they just saying, I have a YouTube channel, and I like to talk about stuff, and people watch it?
Here's what I know, is that
You know what I mean?
119 Ministries puts out stuff and expects people to listen to what they're saying. They say test everything, which I did, by the way. So they have this. You okay over there? They have this 2-part series called Sunburned, the origins of Christmas. Sunburned, SPF 119 recommended. That's what literally. Okay, and
they're clever marketing.
Oh, they're really good at it, and they got great videos. And anyway, so I started watching that. Sounds great. Okay, looks great. You can tell that they put some work into it. Here's the thing, is that I decided to test everything in that video. Oh, man. Major problems in that video. We'll get to that later. First, I want to talk about Zach Bauer and his debate. The reason I keep putting quote marks around debate is because he just did this Christian apologist just wiped the floor with him. I mean, it wasn't even a debate. It was so bad. I had to keep stopping. Michael in the other room was watching at the same time, and after 10 minutes he turned it off. He said, I just can't watch this anymore. He said, it's just so bad I can't even watch it anymore. And then like about 5 minutes later,
like other people had the same reaction. Like I haven't watched it. I don't know anything. I'm just taking your word for it.
Okay,
but
other people did have the same reaction.
Other people too. It's not like you guys are the only ones saying that this was bad.
He admits it. Zach Bauer, the next day he puts them out. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. Let me run to my show notes here. By the way,
so what's our show about today?
Okay, good question. So since it's our Christmas special, there's 2 things that are going on here. Number 1, we want to talk about the true origins of Christmas and whether or not it's pagan. So we do that kind of every year, and we'll look at. But more than that, it's about sources. It's about how we can use sources. In other words, you have a ministry come out. You have ministries come out. Various Messianic ministries and Hebrew roots ministries. They come out. They say Christmas is pagan. Okay, that's the claim. Okay, now. I agree. There are pagan overtones in Christmas for sure. I agree. I think that the Christmas tree is pagan. But there is a big but here. There's one way to go about and try to show why you would think that, or how you might even be able to get to that conclusion. And there's a way that everybody else does it. So, for instance, these guys. And when I say these guys, I'm talking mainly now about Zach Bauer and 119 Ministries. They haven't gotten the training necessary to understand what the difference is between a primary source and a secondary source. We'll talk about that in a few seconds. Let's listen to a little bit of this debate between Zach Bauer and Michael. He didn't give his last name. He didn't want his face shown either, because since he's doing apologetics, he felt that it would be better if his face was not seen. I don't know why that is, but whatever. Maybe he's debating some neo-Nazis or something. Who knows? Anyway, this will give you a flavor. This will give you a flavor of what was going on here, Rob. Listen to this.
Okay, well, I got a couple questions. I want to.
That guy right there, the one with the cracking voice, that's why I think he was sick. That's Michael, okay?
Okay, well, I got a couple questions. I want to respond to that a lot. First of all, I agree we're not supposed to worship like the pagans do. No one does that.
Okay, first of all, I'm sorry to stop it here. This is good. Michael has already started out by kind of throwing a bone to Zach Bauer. I agree we shouldn't worship like the pagans worship, okay? Great. This is a great way to I mean, he could have pegged him on this, but he didn't.
No one at least.
But you do. If you
No,
keep
you don't.
Christmas.
No, you don't. No, that's a misunderstanding of Christmas decorations. We're putting up a tree as a simple decoration. No one's bowing before the ancient tree. No one's saying, "Oh, mighty tree, I'm honoring God with you." That's a total man. That's just not accurate at all.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, and let me ask you this, and I'll let you answer. When it says, "Oh, Christmas tree, your leaves are never changing. Your green leaves are never changing." That song. That's a whole kickback to the whole time where they worshiped that tree because it was a symbol of fertility, because it was green when everything else was dead or appeared dying.
Okay, hang on just a second. I want to stop right here. We got more than a minute left on this clip, but Zach has just made a lot of claims see, here's the thing is that people in the Messianic and the Hebrew roots movement, they're like, yeah, all right, get him, Zach. To me, I'm thinking, no, you're walking into a trap here. And the trap is that you just made a lot of claims in a short little sentence, and you're going to have to back those up now. Okay? Listen again.
Fertility because it was green when everything else was dead or appeared dying.
What are your sources on this? I mean, ancient pagan sources. Because I've read Pliny. I've read Maximus of Tyre. They don't mention fir trees, especially with the Celts. They say they held the oak and the acorn sacred. Even Lucian, the Roman poet, says this. But I'm not seeing any actual sources that talk about the fir tree. If you're going to go to ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, they didn't have those type of trees. Those were northern.
Those are out there, but also you can turn right to Isaiah chapter 14, verse 7 and 8, where it tells you that the fir trees, the cedar trees, when Satan is cast down, will cry out in rejoicing because the woodsman is no longer cutting them down. Why was the woodsman coming down and cutting down fir trees, cedar trees? Because they stayed green. They were symbols of fertility. You know, even the verse you mentioned in Jeremiah 3 says they placed their favors under the green tree. Aren't all trees green? Why does it specify the green tree? Because at the time of December, you would put these things under these symbols of fertility and rejoice that winter was coming to an end.
Again, I want an ancient pagan source which says this, because there were green trees all over ancient.
Why do you need one? There's some in your Bible, in Isaiah and Jeremiah.
Okay, so Zach says, why do you need one? Why do you need an ancient source? And Michael laughs at him, rightly so, because, I'm sorry, but okay, let's go to what Zach is claiming here in the Bible. Now, he keeps saying that he goes back to the Bible on this, which is Isaiah 14, 7 and 8, and Jeremiah 3:13. Let's read both of those. I'm going to read out of the ESV here, okay? Isaiah 14, 7 and 8 says, the whole earth is at rest and quiet. They break forth into singing. The cypress rejoice at you, the cedars of Lebanon saying, since you were laid low, no woodcutter comes up against us. Okay, so here's the problem that I see with Zach's argument so far. Well, actually, let's read Jeremiah. This is Jeremiah 3:13. Only acknowledge your guilt that you rebelled against the Lord your God, and scattered your favors among foreigners under every green tree, that you have not obeyed my voice, declares the Lord. Here's the problem, is that Zach would have to be claiming, for his argument to hold any weight, Zach would have to be claiming that this passage in Isaiah and the passage in Jeremiah are directly referencing Christmas trees. I don't think they are. I think it's pretty...
Well, not only that, if we were to take that angle, we could go to Psalm 1. If we want to go to Jeremiah 17, which parallels Psalm 1, it says the righteous will be like a tree, and his leaves will always be green. Or you could go to Psalm 92, which many people read on Shabbat, where it talks about the righteous will be like the cedar of Lebanon, and they're always giving fruit. So back to the song, "Oh Christmas Tree," I just pulled up the lyrics. I was intrigued by that. At the very end, it says, how God has adorned thee. So even for the author of, now there might be different versions of that song. I'm not a scholar of Christmas hymns or anything, but the notion is that the tree is seen as a beautiful sign of God's creation. And we can see that in Jeremiah 17. We can see it in Psalm 92. We can definitely see it in Psalm 1, where the righteous is like a tree that bears fruit.
I'm not trying to say.
So I'm concerned that, that could go either way. If you want to just argue that kind of symbology, I think.
Okay, so the point here is though that if
these are actually trees. These are actually trees in Psalm 92, Jeremiah 17, and in Psalm 1. The etz that is talked about by the prophets is wood. Now it's the same word, but it's wood that's carved and shaved and covered with gold or whatever. That's an idol. They're trying to make it. They want to make something look like a certain image. That's my understanding.
Yeah,
of it.
they're becoming an idol, and that's just it. Is that the one thing that this Christian apologist has here is that I'm sorry, but this is really trying to take Scripture and equate it just because it says something about a tree. Now saying that it has to do with a Christmas tree. I don't see it. I'm sorry, I just don't see it. So instantly, Zach's Bible verses that he has brought forth are not going to hold weight when it comes to this debate. And actually, I'm going to go out of order here. Let's listen to what Zach said. This is so the next day he posted this, talking about the debate and some of the sources that he did have but didn't bring to the table. This is what he says about it.
Had our debate yesterday, and it was obvious I was not as prepared as I should have been in that debate. Now, let me give you some reasons why. Before the debate, a couple days before the debate, I had told somebody on Facebook when they asked me, I hope you bring a lot of great sources for your debate. And I said, I absolutely have a lot of great sources for that debate, and I'm going to bring them. And then before the debate, about a day before, I'm thinking, you know what? When I was a while back, when I would debate evolution versus creation with atheists, I was never allowed to bring the Bible to a debate. I wasn't allowed to do that because the atheist has already deemed the Bible as false. But I'm not debating an atheist here. I'm debating a Christian, a supposed Christian.
Notice what he does here now. A supposed Christian. So now he puts Michael, this Christian apologist, down as a supposed Christian as opposed to, anyway.
Bible-believing Christian who uses the Bible as his ultimate word, as the ultimate, fact checker. I mean, if that's your ultimate guide. Before the debate, I decided, okay, I'm not going to bring in the secular stuff. I had some things.
When he talks about secular stuff, he's talking about ancient sources. So anything that's not the Bible. The other thing is that I hate to tell Zach this, but most scholars, not all, of course, but most scholars who are doing work on this stuff are, in fact, Bible-believing Christians. It's a misnomer that, all the people who are saying that Christmas, all the scholars who are saying that Christmas is not a pagan holiday or whatever they might be saying, even if they're saying it's a pagan holiday, to say that they're not Bible-believing Christians is simply a misnomer. We'll get back to this clip because I want to play the end of it later. But let's go back to this debate. So this is another instance from Zach Bauer, and he's once again talking to Michael. This is a little bit of a shorter clip.
They didn't have those type of trees. Those were northern.
Those are out there, but also you can turn right to Isaiah chapter 14, verse 7 and 8, where it tells you that the fir trees, the cedar trees, when Satan is cast down, will cry out in rejoicing because the woodsman is no longer cutting them down. Why was the woodsman coming down and cutting down fir trees, cedar trees? Because they stayed green. They were symbols of fertility. Even the verse you mentioned in Jeremiah 3 says they placed their favors under the green tree. Why aren't all trees green? Why does it specify the green tree? Because
so we've already heard this. So basically, I'm sorry, I re-upped my clip. Basically, he says, I want ancient sources. Zach says, why do you need ancient sources? So here's the thing: is that we do have. I want to kind of come off topic for a little bit and talk now. So what Zach has said time and time again, okay, and once again, I'm going to state this again so that people understand this. I believe that Christmas has many, many pagan things injected into it, including the Christmas tree. I think the Christmas tree actually does have pagan origins. However, I certainly would not get on YouTube in a debate against a Christian apologist on such a topic. So Zach keeps saying that the Christmas tree was a sign of fertility, and that people would put, before the first century, people would put presents under it, and as worship to a sun god. Okay, the idea that the Christmas tree came from Sol Invictus or Mithra or sun worship is weak at best. That's all there is to say about it. In terms of proof, I'm not saying that it's not possible. But when you really want to look at the evidence, proof-wise, you're going to have a really, really difficult time trying to prove that the Christmas tree was a fertility symbol. Now, in later history, you have things like the Yule log. We're not really quite sure what the whole point of the Yule log was. It was supposed to burn for a whole long time. You had, even in Sweden today, during Midsummer is a festival that they have. They have a pole that's supposed to represent a phallic symbol. So I understand that there are, but these are later. These are much later beliefs. Okay. So the idea, the fact that Zach keeps going back to this is a fertility sign, there doesn't seem to be any evidence before much later in history that this is actually the point. Tertullian is quite clear about why the pagans believed the Christians worship the sun. Okay? He gives us specific reasons why the pagans believe that the Christians worship the sun. Nowhere does he attest to a tree being decorated and presents being placed under it in homage to the birth of the sun god as a reason that the pagans would believe that they are worshiping the sun. This is what Tertullian says. He says, others, again, certainly, I'm quoting now Tertullian, of course. This is in his Apology 16:9-11. Others, again, certainly with more information and greater verisimilitude, believe that the sun is our God. We shall be counted Persians, perhaps, though we do not worship the orb of day painted on a piece of linen cloth, having himself everywhere in his own disk. The idea, no doubt, has originated from our being known to turn to the east in prayer. But you, many of you, also under pretense sometimes of worshiping the heavenly bodies, move your lips in the direction of the sunrise. In the same way, if we devote Sunday to rejoicing, from a far different reason than the sun worship, we have some resemblance to those of you who devote the day of Saturn to ease and luxury, though they too go far away from Jewish ways, of which indeed they are ignorant. Okay, so what Tertullian here is saying is, look, they think that we're sun worshipers because, A, we turn to the east when we pray, and they think that that means that we're worshiping the sun, and we worship on Sunday, which is a holy day for us. They think that that's why we worship the sun. But the fact that we worship on Sunday doesn't mean that we worship the sun any more than the Jews worshiping on Saturday means that they're worshiping Saturn. This is what he's saying. Now, this is...
And Tertullian, he's 3rd century.
Correct.
He's 200s.
Yes. And listen to what... I could not believe this. Listen to what 119 Ministries now takes this quote. Listen to what they say about this quote. First of all, this is in the second part of 119 Ministries Sunburned. At this point, they've given up most references. They're just saying stuff now. And it sounds like a lot of it is coming from The Two Babylons by Hislop, which has been proven to be erroneous. Here's what and listen to what they say at the end of this clip about this quote from Tertullian.
When the so-called fathers of the church in AD 440 decided upon a date to celebrate the event, they chose the day of the winter solstice, which was firmly fixed in the minds of the people and was already their most important festival. It was
this, once again, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but this certainly is not proven.
Certainly quite convenient for Constantine to adopt this common custom of the birthday of the Messiah at the time he was trying to merge the world religions of Mithraism and Christianity.
Okay, hang on just a sec. We got to stop. There's so many things wrong with this already. First of all, did the church fathers in the 400s set the date of Christmas, as he's saying, or did Constantine fix it? He says both fixed it. Constantine was in the 300s, not in the 400s. So where's he at?
It was firmly fixed in the minds of the people, and was already their most important festival. It was certainly quite convenient for Constantine to adopt this common custom of the birthday of the Messiah at the time he was trying to merge the world religions of Mithraism.
So, fact, we don't have any evidence that December 25th, before Constantine, was set as Roman god. What do you call it? What's the day? What do they call it?
The birthday of the sun god.
Yeah. We don't have any sources from before Constantine that demonstrate or support that claim.
Yes, we'll talk about this in a few minutes because
okay.
I do think that the Christians did place the Christmas celebration. I know we'll talk about this because this is actually a good debate to have. But anyway, let's keep listening. Remember, I want everybody to keep in mind the quote that I just read from Tertullian. Okay,
Christianity. Why did the Roman Church fix upon December 25th as a day to honor the Messiah's birthday when it is clearly a pagan festival day? There's many opinions on this. The prevailing reason was that they justified the switch by insisting that the birthday of the Son was appropriate because they would still be celebrating the birthday of the Son of Righteousness.
Yeah,
there's no source.
Yeah, there's no source, and he doesn't quote any. He didn't put any source up in part one. He keeps putting up quotes, which we'll talk about once we get to a different section of this.
He does hint right there at the Malachi passage.
He does.
Son of Righteousness.
Son of Righteousness. Okay, so now this is where he's going to hit this Tertullian quote. Listen to this.
See Malachi chapter 4, verse 2. However, this flavor of thinking began happening well before it was all solidified into law. Others, with greater regard to good manners, it must be confessed, suppose that the Son is the God of the Christians, because it is a well-known fact that we pray toward the east, or because we make Sunday a day of festivity. Tertullian, 155 to 225 AD. Believe it or not, Tertullian has been called the father of Latin Christianity and the founder of Western theology. It should be a little disturbing that a supposed church father believed himself to basically be a sun god worshiper.
What?
I knew you'd like that one.
Did he just say that?
This, you know what this tells me? You know what this tells me?
Listen, don't this.
Well, you know what that tells me? It tells me that he copied and pasted this from somewhere, that he didn't see the full quote.
No, and he's not putting his own thoughts together.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's not. It's sensationalism.
Well, he saw this. He said, "Oh, Tertullian's a sun worshiper." He's admitting it right here, but he only had a line out of the quote. This shows a very poor, very,
and then he
very
tries
poor.
To undermine all of Christian theology. This is the father of Christian theology. Here was admitted that he was a sun worshiper. What does that do? Are you a Christian theologian? Oh my goodness,
it's bad. Okay, so yeah, exactly. So quote mining. The chat room says quote mining. Exactly, that is exactly what they're doing. So check this out. We're going to go back to Zach Bauer now because all of a sudden, now that you're starting to see from like 119 Ministries, we'll talk about them and some of their sources in a little bit. But Zach, at this point in the debate, has no sources. We're going to listen now to Michael and what he says is the origin of the Christmas tree. Now, Michael, in this, if Zach would have been a little bit more prepared, he actually probably would have done a lot. He could have done a lot better because Michael makes some missteps, some big missteps. Let's listen.
Now, specifically going with the fir tree, let's say, for example, you're right. Now, they had...
I know I'm right.
Well, let me just finish. Let me not get interrupted this time.
By the way, just a message to Zach, if he ever listens to this. Getting louder and talking over people doesn't make you more right.
Okay. Now, let's just say you're right. They were having these... Somehow pine trees were growing in ancient Israel, and they were worshiping them. There's no source which says that. But the first Christmas tree inscription doesn't come around until 1572.
This is actually true.
It doesn't mention anything that has to do with ancient paganism, and no scholar really thinks that today. We're supposed to believe that these these German people in the Middle Ages were sitting around who didn't have libraries, didn't have the internet, and they're going, those ancient pagans in Mesopotamia worshiped trees around this time. So let's just do the same thing, even though they didn't have, the printing press had just come out. Most scholars are telling us the pine tree, the Christmas tree, comes from paradise trees. These existed in Adam and Eve.
Okay, now hang on just a second. I want to stop this real quick. I think here is where Zach could have nailed him if he would have done a little research and known a little bit better. Most scholars are not telling us that this is where they came from. There's scholars are totally split on where the Christmas tree came from. Some scholars say that this is where Christmas trees come from. There's no doubt about that. Michael's right that some scholars believe this, but certainly not a majority. There's not a majority of scholars that are telling us that this is exactly where Christmas trees came from. Okay, scholars are going to agree that they came out of Germany, but the origins of why the Germans started bringing in the Christmas tree is very unknown.
The Christmas tree comes from paradise trees. These existed in Adam and Eve plays, and Adam and Eve's day was December 24th. It featured a fir tree with red apples hanging from it. And after the play was over, you didn't waste food in this time, so they would eat the apples, and typically they eat it the day after on December 25th. In the 1800s, the red apples were replaced by glass balls because those were just coming out around that time. Most scholars recognize that is a far more post-parsimonious interpretation than it coming from thousands of years before it in a culture the Germans knew nothing about at this time. I mean, we know so much about the Mesopotamians from recent archaeology that didn't exist in the 1500s when this was first coming out.
True.
So
That's true.
It creates a very unparsimonious interpretation to think somehow there was this giant 1,000-year gap, 2,000-year gap of these trees, and all of a sudden they're showing up again when they're not mentioned by early Christians celebrating them like St. Augustine or Maximus the Confessor or anybody like that. So this creates a far more parsimonious understanding. And earlier you mentioned Sol Invictus and Il Gaba. Look, there's not a lot of evidence for this. There's only one inscription of Sol Invictus being on December 25th, and it dates to 354 AD in the Philocalian calendar. Good. Prior to this,
how far back do you want to go? They didn't have perfect filing systems back then.
But how far back do you want to go? There's the Fasta inscriptions, which state Sol Invictus.
How far back do you want to go? Zach, open mouth, insert foot at this point.
To early August, late August, the end of October, December 7th. These go back to the Roman Republic.
But you have that calendar in 354 that absolutely, undeniably equates Christmas with Sol Invictus. There's no getting around
it. It says they're both on the same day. That's it. It does not equate them.
See, Michael, this kid's he knows his stuff.
He knows his facts. They are mentioned, they're not even next to each other. They're in completely different parts of the book. And they have there's no reference like the author even thought of them. They're in completely different parts of the book, and you could just as Michael could just as much make the argument from that document that the Romans that had been moving the day around, set it on the 25th to counter the Christmas claim.
Actually,
you could just as much make that argument. So
you're right. The festival of Sol Invictus. Is it Sol Invictus? Look, okay, so you have two things going on here. First of all, the Mithra, the cult of Mithra and Sol Invictus are not necessarily, I want to be very careful with my words here, they're not necessarily the same. Some scholars believe that they are the same. Sol Invictus and the worship of Mithra were the same cult. Others believe that they might have been separate. There's not any, we don't have a lot of evidence of either of these cults. Sol Invictus doesn't seem to come to power or just start to rise until around this time, and it sprouted up for 100 years, and then it just kind of fizzled out. We don't have any evidence before that. Beyond that, was it Sol Invictus? Sol Invictus switched dates. Originally, it was in August. Then they moved it to October. Then they moved it to November, and eventually, then they moved it to December 21st, right? And then later, in 354 is the first. What? What are you looking at?
The chat room. Sorry.
What? What'd they say?
Nothing. Don't even. Just keep talking, dude. Keep talking. Okay, let's just. What are we gonna do? Where are we going next?
Well, hey, you want to talk about the date of December 25th? Let's talk about it.
So here's the thing. Let's just recap. Okay, the tree. We don't know where the trees come from, where Christmas trees come from today.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
And here's the thing. The thing is, you have people who are devoted Christians who have Christmas trees, and you have people that are basically pagans, and they have Christmas trees in their house. Okay, so somehow what we are today is very different. And it's true. It seems like I believe the consensus that it comes from early modern Germany, right? 1500s Germany.
Well, this is certainly where we have it first, where we have first attestation in history of it.
Is it Michael's? What was his name?
Michael's
point that the knowledge of there is no continuity of pagan theology or whatever between the emergence of the Christmas tree and whatever Isaiah is talking about, or whatever was back in Mesopotamia. So those are separate. If we can, I'll just insert my point here.
Wait, are you talking about Christmas trees, or are you talking about December 25th?
No, back to December 25th.
Good. Yeah,
are we done talking about the Christmas tree?
No,
thing?
we are absolutely not.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe
we got plenty more. But keep going. Let's focus on December 25th for a few seconds.
My view, I could be wrong, and my view is that the celebration that is now pretty fixed. I mean, we basically have 2 dates for Christmas, right? In world Christianity, you've got December 25th, and then you've got
January 8th.
January 6th or 8th or whatever.
It's the 8th, yeah.
And those are fixed. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It looks to me, in the research I've done, that those were both calculated out of a core belief way back that Yeshua was born on the same, that he was conceived the same day that he suffered. And what you have is you had two different views of the calendar.
The same date that he was. So the same day of the year that he was suffered was the day he was conceived in the womb of Mary. That is a very early belief. And what happens is it's split. Some calculated it as April 6th. Some calculated as March 25th. They each went 9 months because they were aware of 9-month gestation. And then they plotted the birth. Wait, hang on just a sec. Wait. I agree with you. I somewhat agree with you that this is how they came to the December 25th. But the reason that they went exactly 9 months is because since Yeshua was the perfect man, he would have a perfect gestation.
Okay, sure. So the idea was, and this is in the 4th century, so this is somewhere maybe in the late 200s, but then into the 300s. You had the issue of the incarnation, whether Yeshua was really a man or not. So they were under pressure. I believe they were under pressure to say, yes, he was born. He was a physical man. And so he needed to have a birthday. Now, they understood. It was one of the early church fathers, might have been Tertullian. They knew that that in the Bible, the only 2 birthdays were pagans. They knew that it was Pharaoh, and they knew it was a King Herod, who's not a pagan.
Yep.
But so there's a Jew who was celebrating his birthday. They would argue he was half Jew. But the point is this. They thought, here's the King of Kings in the flesh. They wanted to affirm that he came in the flesh. They wanted to associate his birth with his suffering, which was been associated with Passover. And they were looking at, like the passage that we heard, Malachi, the sun will rise with healing in its wings, son of righteousness. And they were trying to think back. Now, remember, this is the time they're just realizing these Roman church fathers that there's this Jewish cultural background. They're quoting, one early, I think he was second or 3rd century in North Africa. He argued that it was the 4th day of creation.
You're talking about Clement. You're talking about Clement.
Yeah, he was looking at Genesis, saying, "Oh, the sun is created on the 4th day. That means 4th day of creation." So then they had the idea of creation in the spring. The rabbis later in the Talmud, they say, well, some say it's in the spring, some say it's in Tishri, which is in the, neither here nor there. The point is, you had all this going on, and it's not even until the 4th century that you have Augustine and more importantly, Jerome push for this Hebraic understanding. They understood that there's this Hebrew language, Judaic culture below the surface of their Latin text. And they're trying to see beyond it, but they have limited, just like Michael said in his argument. These guys had limited resources. They had limited expenses, limited exposure to books, and they were trying to from the scriptures come up and solidify a birthday. And I believe that December 25th came out of whether you want to judge that they had good intentions but they failed or whatever, that it was a midrashic type of effort to identify a birthday for the Savior, and that it had nothing to do with what was going on with the Roman things. I think by the end, it's clear, let me finish one more point. It's clear by the end of the 4th century, by the late 300s, you do have this mix now. That's when you start having all the things that were happening in the pagan world are starting to infiltrate, and you have these church fathers saying, wait a minute, you can't do this. If you're going to, don't buy presents, give charity.
Okay, so Rob and I disagree on this. Because I think that there's much more to it than that. And I think that there was a want. Look, we don't have the church fathers actually attempting to affix and celebrate. Now, I grant that Clement in the 2nd century and whatnot, these guys were trying to figure out when the Messiah was born. You don't see them actually attempting to follow or to celebrate a birthday.
I'm not talking about celebration.
Hang on.
I grant you that.
Okay. Hang on. But you don't see them actually attempting to celebrate the birth of the Messiah in the December month until after Constantine in 313 makes the edict that Christianity is legal and converts, quote unquote, to Christianity.
No, but you don't even see it that early. It's not even
within
that early.
50 years. That's unbelievably fast.
Okay, it's after Constantine, yes, but it's not right at the moment.
I would disagree with that. Without the internet, without all these kind of things, his edict goes out, and less than 40 years, you have it on a calendar. All of a sudden, the Christians wanted to have a time in December. You had Saturnalia that was being...
But you do not know. But still, this is where I feel like you're going out on a limb. We don't know that December 25th was any special day.
I'm not saying that it was, but you had Saturnalia that was certainly... we know that was celebrated on the 17th. Right, and it lasted for 8 days. It ended on the 25th. You had Constantine was certainly a sun worshiper before he converted at the bridge. Right, Constantine was certainly a sun worshiper, and I think that there's good evidence to prove that. Historians agree on that, and I mean I can read if you'd like me to.
No, that's okay. I'll take you at your word for that.
So Edward Gibbons, who was the standard, I grant that this was written back in the 70s. It was a standard back in the 70s. There is a good amount of chance
just quote Hislop, dude.
Oh, are you saying that Gibbons is on par with Hislop?
I don't know. Which book is heavier?
Come on, you know Gibbons. You think that Gibbons isn't a good scholar?
Oh, what does he say? Okay,
he says, whatever symptoms of Christian piety might transpire in the discourses or actions of Constantine, he preserves till he was near 40 years of age in the practice of the established religion, and the same conduct which in the court of Nicomedia might be imputed to his fear. Could he ascribe only to the inclination or policy of the sovereign of Gaul? His liberality restored the enriched in temples of the gods. The medals, which issued from his imperial mint, are impressed with the figures and attributes of Jupiter and Apollo, of Mars and Hercules. And his filial piety increased the council of Olympus by the solemn apotheosis of his father Constantius. But the devotion of Constantine was more peculiarly directed to the genius of the sun, the Apollo of Greek and Roman mythology, and he was pleased to be represented with the symbols of the god of light and poetry. The unerring shafts of that deity, the brightness of his eyes, his laurel wreath, immortal beauty, and the elegant accomplishments seemed to point him out as the patron of a young hero. The altars of Apollo were crowned with the votive of offerings of Constantine, and the credulous multitude were taught to believe that the emperor was permitted to behold with mortal eyes invisible majesty of their tutelar deity, and that either walking in or in a vision he was blessed with the auspicious omens of a long and victorious reign. The sun was universally celebrated as the invincible guide of the protector of Constantine, and the pagans might reasonably expect that the insulted God would pursue with unrelenting vengeance the impiety of his ungrateful favor. So, okay, look, we know that Constantine was worshipped the sun and was before his conversion. It was less than 50 years until all of a sudden you have the Christians affixing Christmas in the December month. Why did they want to do that? Why did they want to all of a sudden affix this festival in the December month? I'm not saying it's on the exact same day, but I think because you had a significant amount of pagans that were worshiping too, and we have early 5th century. Granted, this is later, and see these are the
okay. But here's the thing. I think I could grant you some slack on that, but I would say that everywhere in the world, I bet, well, in the northern hemisphere where you've got the winter months, you have a natural flow. People go inward, right? They go in to stay warm if they're going to survive.
Sure.
And in that cycle, and because I know that's where I live where, like right now, it's like super cold. I had to shovel my driveway again this morning. It's like snow everywhere. And if it weren't for our heat inside, we couldn't survive. So you have this cycle, but in the summer, it's like be outside as much as you can. And so we have this back and forth to stay in this location. I think that any culture in the world that is in that kind of situation, in that kind of climate, is would have had some sort of things going on in the darkest part of the year to bring light, to increase light and warmth and coziness inside.
All I'm saying is that it looks like you have two holidays. Maybe not on December 25th, maybe on the 21st of December. Certainly on the 17th was when Saturnalia was. Okay, and we know about Saturnalia from sources before Christmas came around. And of course, Michael, in this debate, he's going to say that it has nothing to do with it because it was on the 17th. But my point is that you have Constantine, the ruler of Rome, who is a sun worshiper, and all of a sudden he converts in 313, and guess what? Less than 40 years later, you have the first appearance of Christmas in the December months when these holidays were going on. At the beginning of the 5th century, now granted this is late, it's attributed to John Chrysostom. However, it's in his Latin homilies and not in his Greek homilies. Some of the Latin homilies are said by scholars to have been written by someone other than John Chrysostom and added later. They think that they were added at the beginning of the 5th century, as opposed to the end of the 4th century when John Chrysostom actually wrote. Nonetheless, even if they're late and not written by John Chrysostom, we have in the early 5th century, we have this quote from his Homilies 31 in the Latin. On this day also the birthday of Christ was lately fixed at Rome, in order that while the heathen were busy with their profane ceremonies, the Christians might perform their sacred rites undisturbed. They call this, December 25th, the birthday of the invincible one, or Mithra. But who is so invincible as the Lord? They call it the birthday of the solar disk, but Christ is the Son of Righteousness. So at least by the beginning of the 4th century, we have people, probably not John Chrysostom, probably somebody else saying that he was John Chrysostom, that writes this. So at least by the beginning of the 5th century, we have the pagans celebrating on the 25th as well.
Sure, yeah. Well, we have that even back at the chronograph of 354 or whatever.
Exactly.
But the point is, which came first?
I agree.
I agree that this author here at the end of the 4th century makes it look, from his perspective, it looks like the Christians adopted and changed over a Roman thing. Here's an argument for people in that camp. Here's another argument. Not that I'm totally convinced, but I'll give an argument for your side. Is that you could argue that, well, Christians went into places wherever there was a pagan temple, and they would build over that temple and turn it into something Christian. So you could say, one could argue that one of the imperial power muscle flexing of the Christian empire was to replace existing pagan sites and possibly traditions with rework them and put a Christian sprinkle on them. So someone could say, well, and Christmas, making December 25th the birthday of Jesus, is one example of that cultural domination, that imperial power move to relabel, to efface the world of paganism and rework everything as Christianity.
Okay, so here's the nice thing, though, is that you and I both can look at the evidence, and admit that it's inconclusive on what came first. Whether or not Sol Invictus was actually set before Christmas was, or Christmas was set and then Sol Invictus was set on the 25th in a response to Christianity, I don't think that there's substantial evidence enough for us to be able to say one way or the other. Would you agree with that?
Well, my angle, in terms of the celebration, I don't know. In terms of calculation, I stand by my opinion is that the calculations Christians were doing independently
as early as the second century. Yeah, second century.
Yeah, because they wanted to fix it. They wanted to affirm that he was born in the flesh, so therefore they needed to be able to, cough up a birthday. But they were trying to do it. They were doing it in association with Jewish culture. They were looking to the classical text. They were looking to Bethlehem. They believed he was born in Bethlehem, like Micah said. They believed that his name was Emmanuel, like in Isaiah. They believed that he was crucified during Passover. So they were trying, and then they were trying
to associate. I get it. Yeah, I'm with you.
So, and then it was in that time frame they start learning a little bit about the Hebrew language, stuff that we take for granted they didn't know. And they were doing their best. They took the Malachi, I agree, sun will rise, the Son of Righteousness will rise. And these things all kind of fit for them to say logically my argument is that that's the earliest strata. But I will agree that no one is advertising any kind of celebration at that point or anything.
Okay, so let's go back to sources. I want to get back to some of this because basically what we have here, after Zach totally bombed on this debate, what you have is him now coming back, and I'm going to play some more stuff from the debate to kind of show his thinking. But basically, even after the debate, Zach doesn't understand, and 119 Ministries doesn't understand what a good source and a bad source is. Let's keep going here with Zach. This was really disappointing.
That the Roman Catholic Church is a religion that worships a God?
They worship a God, yeah. I don't deny.
Then why do they use pine cones?
They don't use pine cones. This is an association fallacy. Why don't you ask them what it is? And second of all, where is the ancient pagan source saying that they worship these things? The only thing I can find in present day is Encyclopedia Britannica, which has gotten plenty of things wrong. It once said Mithra was born on the 25th of December. This is false. It once said that the middle-aged people thought the earth was flat.
You can tell, by the way, sorry to stop it, you can tell Michael, this guy, he's done his research. He's sharp.
He's well-read. He's well read.
He knows what he's talking about.
This is false. Actual scholars on this issue don't find it, and I've gone past it.
No, that's ridiculous. If you can go to Wikipedia, and everyone, yeah, you laugh about Wikipedia, but you know what? The weird thing about Wikipedia is you have to give sources for your information,
and sometimes
no, if you don't, you get kicked off. That's the reality.
You'll see that thing that says citation needed.
Yeah, if you don't give a citation after a certain time, anyone, or in fact, anyone at that point can pull it off. It's not there. You have to give references for your material in Wikipedia.
Which is why I look at the references, and sometimes I'll come across references to like Ellen G. White, who is the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah, see, and this is also where 119 Ministries goes wrong when they try to cite Wikipedia. Don't cite Wikipedia. Go down, find the source.
Wait, so who all? So we have how many other groups are citing Wikipedia?
Yeah, 119 Ministries put something out, which Zach Bauer then reposted, and one of the references in it is we'll come to this in a few minutes. Let's. So anyway, I think we don't even need to finish this this clip here. The point is that if you're gonna go look, I will admit. I pull open Wikipedia. I think everyone does. Okay, you pull open Wikipedia to maybe get a starting base on something to see what they have to say. I would never reference Wikipedia in a scholarly article ever. What you do is you go down and you see if they have a reference for a source for where they got that material. Then you go either to the library or into your own personal library. You see if you have that book. You pull that book off the shelf. You look at it. You see if they quoted correctly. They see if it's actually the right page. Any of that, because 50% of the time it's not. Somebody just wants the information to be there, so they'll just give a reference. It's not even,
Yeah, here we have to be, because it's not like you have a whole group of scholars that are checking for working for Wikipedia that are going and chasing down each of these references to see if they're accurate.
Yeah,
it's more like a computer that says, okay, did the guy follow the format correctly? They can't possibly chase down and see. Yeah, so don't if you read it on, let's just say. If you read it on Wikipedia, take it with like a grain of salt or two grains of salt.
Not even take it with a grain of salt. Go see where they're getting their references. Then go to the source that they use.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay, so now of course at this point in the debate, Zach is really struggling. I think he realizes he's in trouble. He's grasping at straws. And he asks, how far back do you actually want to go? This was a misstep.
And earlier you mentioned Sol Invictus and Il Gaba. Look, there's not a lot of evidence for this. There's only one inscription of Sol Invictus being on December 25th, and it dates to 354 AD in the Philokaelian calendar.
He's right.
Prior to this,
how far back do you want to go? They didn't have perfect filing systems back then.
Okay, so we've already heard this, but they didn't have perfect filing systems back then. Here's the thing. Okay, now I'll give you a little break from this, Rob, because I think that you'll enjoy this. Rob and I actually had occasion to sit down with one Nehemiah Gordon at the ETS and SBL meeting. Now, we strongly disagree with Nehemiah Gordon. I would say that I certainly do not promote anything that he does because he's not a believer. He doesn't believe that the issue is the Messiah. Yeah, and not only that, but some of his scholarship has been questionable in certain ways. But he's a nice guy, and
real nice guy,
real nice guy. As I was listening to various ministries and what they were putting out about Christmas, I came across something that Nehemiah Gordon did with an atheist scholar, and this atheist scholar, perhaps this was the best piece of Christmas truth that I could find. Now, they get a little bit iffy here and there, but I had to pull this because I just thought, man, an atheist scholar and a non-believing Jew are the ministries in the Hebrew Roots movement that put out the most truthful thing. Listen to what they have to say. This is a long clip, 2 minutes and 47 seconds. And it sounds like they get off track, but they kind of reel it back in.
December 25th was the birth of all sun gods, not Mithra particularly.
Now, do we know that from the ancient sources? This is what I want to verify. Do we actually know that from the pre-Christian sources?
Well, it's hard to say specifically. Like, for example, December 25th is the last day of Saturnalia. We know that from pre-Christian sources. And the Saturnalia...
Yes. Yeah, he's right. That's true.
How do we know that?
Saturnalia was fixed on December 17th.
Because they're saying it's 8 days?
Yes.
So it's an 8-day festival in December?
Yes.
Because Saturnalia started at different days. We have a whole bunch of... I'd need to see more on that. Anyway,
you're right. You're right. It actually does switch. They switch it. They switch it to December 25th. But originally, I think the earliest source that we have is that it's on December 17th. Anyway,
I think we have more. Okay, never mind.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I want to hear what you're saying.
I think we have it that it's all over the place.
You're thinking of Sol. You're thinking of Sol Invictus. Sol Invictus is all over the place. Saturnalia was set in
You're
December.
Right. That's right. The other S word.
Yeah, Sol Invictus was originally in August. Saturnalia, though, I think I haven't. I'm totally willing to have you show me that, but
Okay, well, I'm not going to chase. That's just something I don't care. So, but I'm not going to spend time. I've got other things I'm doing. But anyway, so
okay, here we go. Here we go.
It's the festival of the god Saturn, but it's also related to the rebirth of the sun, and it goes from the 17th to the 25th, and an 8-day week for the Romans is about the resurrection of the sun, kind of thing. We have a Christian calendar mid 4th century. It's a Christian calendar, but it's really a calendar of all holidays, and not just Christian ones. And it has on there the December 25th is the birthday of Sol Invictus, which is a sun god,
the invincible sun, right?
Right, exactly. That's the main sun god. There was a rise of Sol Invictus cult in the 3rd century AD, and so it was kind of very popular in that 100-year span. So according to this Christian source, and this is a fairly early Christian source, close enough to the actual events of the 3rd century, for example, to know that this was actually the case. They're not making it up. And then the idea of porting the birth of Jesus to the 25th came later.
It's interesting to say porting, meaning they believed he was born and they had one date and they transferred it to this other date.
So now this is where we start to get off a little bit, but then they're going to reel it back in.
Let's move it. Yeah. And I think that was political. The reality is they wanted their celebration to overwhelm the pagan celebration. That's their way of erasing the pagan holiday, is just make it a Christian holiday. And then the more people worship the Christian version of it, the less popular the pagan version of it will be. And eventually the pagan will just wither away like a vestigial organ. And what you have left is this Christian celebration.
So how much of that is speculation? In other words, how much do we know for sure that that's...
This is the one thing I like about Nehemiah in this interview. He keeps saying, "Okay, what do we know?"
How much of that is speculation?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
a good question. Yeah.
Out and say, we're going to make the birthday of Jesus December 25th to get the sun worshippers to join us? Do we have sources like that?
I'm not sure if, insofar as we have them discussing it, it's early Middle Ages. So you can't always be sure that what they're saying, because they'll have their own historical hypotheses as to how this happened. Whether their hypotheses are true or not is yet another question. I think by and large, it's our inference, because we can see the sequence of events. It started a pagan holiday. Now the Christians are making it their holiday. Why would they do that? There are logical reasons.
This is speculation. I get it.
The chronology that this atheist is positing, I think he needs to demonstrate that. He's taking it for granted. He's saying our view, but at least it seems like he's willing to say, maybe it's not exactly right. He's building a lot on his chronology.
40 seconds left.
You can to say that maybe the medieval historians who are saying this might have had on to something on that.
However, look, if I were a Christian apologist who really loved Christmas, I could come along and say, yeah, you've got a 4th century source that's 300 years after Jesus, and the pagans were competing with Christianity and put the birthday of their son, S-U-N, to get the Christians. I'm not saying it's likely, but it's possible.
Yeah, but it's not.
I agree with Nehemiah on that. That's where I'm coming from. That's the same point I'm trying to make. I'm like, you could argue it both ways. You could say that the pagans are doing it against the Christians.
No, according to the evidence, you certainly could argue that. We got 17...
we don't know how many people were doing these celebrations. We don't know if it was just like a one little group of elite people get together do this, or were the masses amounts of people. We don't know who was celebrating these
Actually,
feats.
I'll tell you this. I read something.
The Sol Invictus one that's all over the place. It sounds like it was like a lot of money went into it.
Well, here's the thing. I read something the other day. I haven't verified it. It was in Encyclopedia Britannica, which has been wrong. But they said, and it was the new one. It was like the 2016. But they said that there was hundreds of Sol Invictus temples, but from what we've uncovered in archaeology, but if you take into account the amount of people in the Roman culture at that time, those temples would have only been able to serve less than 1% of the Roman culture. So Sol Invictus, what they're saying is Sol Invictus was not big. Yeah.
That's Sol Invictus. So when we talk about Saturnalia, we wonder too. We don't know how widespread was it. Maybe someone has researched that out. But to me, there's just so much speculation in the whole Christmas to me, that's why I'm just not. It's
okay. I want to go back. I know you're getting tired of it, but I'm not. I want to go back to Zach. We're almost done with Zach. Okay, we're almost done with Zach. And then we're going to move on. But this last little quote, there's almost a disdain here. Michael uses the term etymological fallacy, which means that the building of a word, you're taking the building of a word, you're using it incorrectly. That's what that means. And listen to what Zach says.
Oh, so we're back to the other guy.
Yeah, we're back to Zach now, and we're only going to be on this for a few seconds, and then we're moving on to 119 Ministries after this, and I only got a couple of clips from then. So you're almost done. The pain is almost over, Rob. Don't worry.
You're decorating it. You're putting lights on it and tinsel and ornaments.
When you decorate your house, are you showing your house reverence and worshiping it?
What's the I think it isn't even the key word. The root word for ornament is to ornate something, to make something ornate.
That's an etymological fallacy.
It's giving it reverence, man.
That's an etymological fallacy. You're defining it based on
its etymology. You've been to seminary, right?
No.
Where'd you get all these seminary words? Because a lot of the guys I debate use these words.
I study. I read things. I read scholars all the time. This is what I do. That's what I do. I drink and I know things.
I drink and I know things. Guys, awesome.
Should we save that clip?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Caleb, just as a reminder, this is a footnote on a footnote.
Yeah.
Clip that one, and then the one saved.
I already got that.
Okay, cool. All right.
But this shows almost like I don't know, an arrogance or a disdain towards.
I read a lot. I drink and I know things.
Yeah.
That's like one of my favorite clips of all time.
Ever.
For me, it's coffee.
Yeah.
But for some y'all,
here we go.
It's fine brews.
That's what I do. I drink and I know things.
Yes. So anyway, you can see that. You can see that Zach is just. I mean, he's
that
just.
Was fit.
Painful, shining through some ignorance. Okay, so let's go back to this clip. This is the last thing I got from Zach. Okay, this is the clip that I played earlier. He's not. He said he wasn't prepared. Now he's going to bring. Now he's going to show you the sources that he would have brought if he didn't think that he could just bring the Bible. He's going to, as if he would have slaughtered with these sources.
Some things. I had a book by N.F. Pearson called The Stories of Our Christmas Customs.
That's not a primary source.
Tom C. McKinney wrote The Holidays and Holy Days.
Not a primary source.
The Christmas Celebration in Many Lands by E.J. Patterson.
Not a primary source.
And a number of other books. There was one I really liked. It was, where is it at? It was this one here, The Meaning of Trees, A History of Botany, where it says an ancient...
Not a primary source. This is the problem. 119 Ministries and Zach from New to Torah. And look, he keeps posting stuff now from non-primary sources. Let me give you an example. We're going to go back to Rob's Hanukkah story. You got this poem that was written in the 20th century that says the reason that that this lady went, she decapitates the head of the leader, and that's how they won. Now, if I say that now, I say, look, I have a source. It's this Jewish poem.
Right. Or the Talmud. They burnt miracle of oil. My source is the Talmud. Therefore, it happened.
Yeah, but it's super late.
And, That's the question.
And
that's what I appreciated about Nehemiah Gordon talking to the atheist guy, saying, look, okay, I know you're telling me that, but what are the sources? And what time frame are they from? How did they word it?
My point is this: Zach and 119 Ministries need to realize that if I reference that poem, what bearing does that have on the Maccabees of 170 years before the birth of the Christ, right? What bearing does this 20th century poem have on that? It doesn't. Just because, look, and I know, I went and I checked out.
The issue. That's the issue with the German Tannenbaum or whatever, with the ancient Assyrian or Mesopotamian or whatever Jeremiah was talking about.
You can't take these secondary sources and all of a sudden say, look, this scholar says it. Well, what just because a scholar says something doesn't mean that it's valid. And like this from 119 Ministries in their first video on Sunburned, 119 Ministries.
The giving of presents was a Roman custom, while the Yule tree and Yule log are remnants of old Teutonic nature worship. Gradually, the festival sank into mere revelry. The custom was forbidden by an act of Parliament in 1555, and the Reformation brought in a refinement in the celebration of Christmas by emphasizing its Christian elements. Unger's Bible Dictionary. So basically, Christmas was illegal because of the sun god elements until we Christianized the sun god worshiping traditions.
Okay, here's the problem with this clip. Now, the thing that he's not going to tell you, and he probably doesn't even know, is that Unger's Bible Dictionary is total nonsense. They have all sorts of horrible things in it. And when I looked at this reference, guess what Unger's Bible Dictionary's main source is for all of this information? Granted, I will give him that it was outlawed by the Puritans, and that the Reformers sort of revitalized stuff. But what is it? What is his? The stuff that he says before this about sun god worship in Unger's Bible Dictionary. Guess what the source is? 2 Babylons by Hislop. That was the Unger's Bible Dictionary's source for what he's saying here. Is Hislop's 2 Babylons. So right here, this whole quote and this whole section of this teaching has to be thrown out. Here's another one. Here's 119 Ministries. This is also from part 1.
So now you know why the date December 25th was chose. Not because our Messiah was born on that date, but because the sun god Mithra was born on that date. There is substantial evidence that Yeshua is not born in December, but born in the fall.
Okay, first of all, I don't know where he's getting that from. Somebody said that to him, and that's what he thinks. Somebody made a case that he was born in the fall. He could have been born.
Mithra on the 25th is also we don't have evidence. We don't have evidence. For
okay,
that.
Hang on, just a sec. He's
in the ancient world.
He's going to quote something here. Hang on.
Likely on the Feast of Sukkot. Eventually, we realized that the early Roman Catholic Church could not discontinue the pagan sun god practices. So they adopted the practice themselves, completely giving into the, if you can't beat them, then join them approach. Let's continue. The transition from festivals commemorating the birth of a sun god to the celebration ostensibly for the Son of God occurred sometime in the 4th century. Unable to eradicate the heathen celebration of Saturnalia, the Church of Rome, sometime before 336 AD, designated a Feast of the Nativity to be observed. James Taylor, Christmas in the New International Dictionary of the Christian Church. Christian scholars are clear that they understand how the sun god practices and days became part of the Christian faith. They don't deny it. Many of the customs associated with Christmas also took their origins from the heathen observances, the exchanging of gifts, extravagant merriment, and the lighting of candles all had previous counterparts in the Roman Saturnalia. The use of trees harkens back to the pagan Scandinavian festival of the Yule.
Okay, so he's taking this from James Taylor's article in the new.
Taking all these kind of things.
Well, he's taking it all from the New International Dictionary, New International Christian Dictionary. Guess what? First of all, this is a secondary source, because James Taylor is a modern scholar. He gives absolutely no references whatsoever. He doesn't tell you where he's getting this. And here's the thing. I'm pretty sure that 119 Ministries, once again, copy and pasted this. And the reason why is because I have this book. I have the exact book that they put up on the screen. The cover and all. Same edition, everything. It's a misquote. They don't quote it right. They take 2 quotes, and both quotes are very wrong. They add a lot of words in there. All sorts of stuff. I don't think that 119 Ministries is maliciously like, haha, I'm gonna make this quote fit what I'm saying. I think what they're doing is they're finding it on the internet. Somebody has already changed it or added words or whatever, or put their own words in. They've copied and pasted it and then tried to cite it from the book. It doesn't work like that. It's a misquote. Check this out. This is from part 2. And by the way, in part 2, they stopped giving you references from where they're getting this information. And first of all, part 1, their information is all from secondary sources anyway. So it's not valid. You can't use secondary sources. And here's the thing: is that Zach, he's putting up these things, these quotes the next day, saying, "Oh, but this isn't going to be a good enough source." You're right; it's not going to be a good enough source. You don't understand. Just a little bit of school would help you understand what a primary source is as opposed to a secondary source. Stop using secondary sources. Use primary sources.
In ancient times, the winter solstice was celebrated in Babylon as the birth of Tammuz, the god of vegetation.
I'm pretty sure that this is coming straight from two Babylons.
This was the shortest day of the year, in the latter part of December. According to the pagans, the reincarnated god Nimrod would visit the evergreen tree and leave gifts upon it. This festival later became known as Saturnalia, and friends and family would exchange gifts. During the time of Nimrod and thereafter, many of the earth's inhabitants were sun worshippers because the course of their lives depended on the yearly round in the heavens. Feasts were held to aid its return from distant wanderings. Fraser admits that the largest pagan religious cult which fostered the celebration
Fraser, by the way, also a secondary source.
December 25th as a holiday throughout the Roman and Greek worlds was the pagan sun worship Mithraism. This winter festival was called the Nativity of the sun. Interestingly, the winter solstice was also celebrated centuries later by the followers of Mithras as the nativity or birthday of the unconquered sun. In Persia and afterward in Rome, Mithraism was renamed Babylonian mother-child worship. This is why Catholicism, which is a derivative of Constantine's sun god interest, focuses so much on Mary and baby Jesus. Not because the Bible merits such focus, but because it helped turn the sun god worshipping pagans and those following the way of Yeshua to become this new religious sun mixed hybrid.
Test everything. That is there's absolutely no basis for what you just said.
It's a big story.
Yeah,
But this is kind of what Andre is working on. Is just how this example, these other examples, how this alternative story of history is put together to kind of create the pagan background of the Christian church, and then to show that if you're going to follow the Torah, you have to, promote basically this, to try to promote Torah observance, to try to teach people that the Bible teaches one thing, but feeding them mistruths to try to lead them down that path. I guess that's the way that it seems like people have taken this. And it goes back, Andre did an excellent job talking about the Hislop book. And I think we see that. We see that it comes down to the very thing we talked about at the beginning. What is a fact? What is a fact?
Pregnant man gives birth. That's a fact. Sorry.
You know what I mean? If I believe something is a fact and I'm building on it, and you're like, dude, that's not even a fact, then there's no way. At what point are we actually going to have meaningful conversation?
I mean, are you getting my frustration with these guys? Do not understand primary and secondary sources. I
know, but my suspicion is that if you bring, it sounded like to me like the idea of us going to a seminary is like shamed upon.
Yeah,
like almost like I'm going to zap you if Caleb, if you went to a seminary, then my audience already knows what that means. And we know what that means. It sounds just like another word, cemetery. You went to a cemetery, I mean seminary, because they're going to indoctrinate you and you're not going to learn to read the Bible. That's the implication. And then it's like, well, okay. And the earth is flat. You know, what can you say? We need to have meaningful conversation, has to have an agreement to establish facts that we can work with.
Just remember, it's not a lie if you believe it.
All right. Well,
so we get down to this. Someone's got a Christmas tree in their house, and you're like, you know, you're a Torah pursuant person. You go, that's paganism. It's paganism.
Okay, so let me just say
there's a Hanukkah. That's not in the Bible, and that's a tree. It's like a menorah. It's got branches. You light it. Tree of light.
Let me tell you this. Okay, so although we don't have attestation of a Christmas tree in early primary sources, what we do have is we have other decorations being used by the pagans for Saturnalia. Okay, and I'll read from Tertullian. This is in his Apologies number 35. He says, "It is forsooth a notable homage to bring fires and couches out before the public." He's talking about Saturnalia now. "To have feasting from street to street, to turn the city into one great tavern, to make mud with wine, to run in troops to acts of violence, to deeds of shamelessness, to lust, allurements. What? Is public joy manifested by public disgrace? Do things unseemly at other times beseem the festival days of princes? Do they who observe the rules of virtue, out of reverence for Caesar, for his sake turn aside from them? Shall piety be licensed to immoral deeds, and shall religion be regarded as affording the occasion for all riotous extravagance? Poor we, worthy of all condemnation! For why do we keep the votive days and high rejoicings in honor of the Caesar with chastity, sobriety, and virtue? Why on the day of gladness do we neither cover our doorposts with laurels, nor intrude upon the day with lamps? It is a proper thing, at the call of public festivity, to dress our house up like some new brothel. However, in the matter of this homage to a lesser majesty, in reverence to which we are accused of a lower sacrilege, because we do not celebrate along with the holidays of the Caesars in a manner forbidden alike by modesty, decadence, and purity. In truth, they have been established rather as affording opportunities for licentiousness than from any worthy motive." I said it was for Saturnalia. It's actually for the festival of Caesar. But the point is that we have people dressing within the Roman pagan culture for Roman pagan holidays, dressing their houses with laurel and bring lamps out. In another passage by Tertullian, he once again talks about the same festival to Caesar and bringing lamps, decorating the house with lamps. He says, "Therefore, too, the Lord demanded that money should be shown him and inquired about the image, whose it was. And when he had heard it was Caesar's, said, Render to Caesar what are Caesar's, and what are God's to God's. That is the image of Caesar, which is on the coin, to Caesar, and the image of God, which is on man. To God, so as to render to Caesar indeed money, to God yourself. Otherwise, what will be God's if all things are Caesar's? Then, do you say, the lamps before my doors and the laurels on my doorposts are an honor to God? They are there, of course, not because they are an honor to God, but to him who is honor in God's stead by ceremonial observances of that kind, so far as is manifest, saving the religious performance, which is in secret, appertaining to demons." So Tertullian certainly talks about lamps being set out for Caesar. Please do not hear me say that this is where Christmas lights come from. That is not what I'm saying. But I am saying that we see doorposts being adorned with laurels.
There are pagan customs, if you want to call them that, Roman customs that believers in Yeshua apparently are
trying to gravitate towards.
Are doing, and maybe they've been doing it their whole life, and they became a believer late in life, and they're just doing, Now, I'm not saying one way or the other this it pertains to Christmas. However, what I am saying is that it would not be surprising to me. I certainly would not fall on my sword, as my father would say. I certainly would not fall on my sword for this. But it would not be surprising to me if some of these traditions were then morphed over into a Christian holiday that was around the same time, especially if we have the Constantine becoming a Christian. That's all I'm saying. Is there proof for that? I don't think we have solid proof for that necessarily from primary sources, but it certainly is plausible that that could happen. That's all I'm saying. Well, it's another holiday year. What do you think, Rob? Good times? Sure.
I can tell that Rob...
That was quite a bit of ground we covered.
Yes, it was. And, by the way, if anybody ever wants to hear about the origins of Hanukkah, we did a show last year on Hanukkah and whether or not it's pagan or not, some of the origins of the customs within Hanukkah. And I can, if you'd like to hear, if you'd like to know what specific show that is, you You can email me, chag@torahresource.com. Anything else before we go, Rob?
Nope.
Alrighty. Well, I hope that for the Christians out there who are listening, I do believe that there's some pagan origins to Christmas. And, what can I say? I certainly would not be bringing a Christmas tree to my home, nor will I be decorating with laurel and holly or putting up mistletoe or any such thing. I will be, however, celebrating Hanukkah, something that Yeshua did, and I think that we see that quite clearly within the scriptures. So we hope that you have a good festival of Hanukkah, and if you are celebrating something else, then may your home be filled with the light of the Messiah. And no matter what you're doing, we hope that all homage is going to our great God and Savior, Yeshua, our Messiah.